Hey out there, everybody. Welcome to Form Check Friday. We're gonna take videos that our viewers sent to us and I'm gonna review them. I'm a powerlifting coach. I've been doing this for over a decade. I've been competing at the world championship level for some years. Coaching world championships, all that kind of stuff. So you're gonna wanna listen to what I have to say, I hope. Anyways. Our viewers send in videos, we take a look at them. It's a nice thing we kind of do with our community. If you want to submit, links in the description box below. Form Check Friday is brought to you by Bells of Steel. Now, Bells of Steel is a Calgary-based local company that sells powerlifting, bodybuilding, kettlebelling, any kind of fitness equipment you could imagine. Specifically, trying to make things accessible and affordable for people who are putting together a home gym. For a long time, a lot of the sort of more robust and well-built powerlifting equipment has been pretty darn expensive and hard to get your hands on, especially, you know, if you live in Canada. I don't know if there's many big manufacturers of things like that here in Canada, but Bells of Steel has helped to solve that problem. And as you can see, and if you've seen any of our other videos, you've seen a lot of Bells of Steel products that we use regularly. The racks, the bars, the plates, number of different selectorized machines, plate-loaded stuff. Honestly, they've got it all. Right now, we're anxiously awaiting a Smith machine attachment that they're doing for the Hydra rack. And Dylan is very, very excited about it. And I think it'll be pretty darn cool too. So anyways, stay tuned to that. If you're looking to pick up anything from Bells of Steel, go ahead and check the link in the description below. It's bellsofsteel.com in Canada, or is it bellsofsteel.ca? Let me check my notes here. .com for Canada, .us for the US. So go check that out. They ship from multiple places. Whether you're Canadian or US, and they have showrooms in Calgary, Toronto, and Indianapolis. Without any further ado, we're gonna get on to the video here. We're gonna look at some lifters lifting. We're gonna talk about said lifting. So Stefan is doing some bench here. And I think every week now we're getting equipped lifting. We got a lot of equipped benches. I think I did one last week, so anyways. I'm always a little extra excited to do some equipped lifting. You know, I did it for a while, had some success with it, and it was a lot of fun. It was a really cool way to kind of change up the sport and do some new and interesting things that were, you know, basically the same things, squat, bench, and deadlift, but do them in quite a different way. So, all right, this is Stefan, and he says, this is a possible opener. I have a hard time getting the bar down, lose strength while trying to touch. Comp max is 195. My goal is to hit 200 next comp. I think my technique is on point, but additional criticism would be great if I have something to correct. So I would probably open lighter than this. This looks quite slow. And yes, we lose a little bit of gas trying to get it down to the chest. But I also think this here, like really pulling your shirt down, is gonna mean that your shirt is giving you the absolute maximum in carryover. So a lot of the times, and it's funny, I have a tattoo on my chest that has a number of lines on it in the wings of a scarab, but I'll often use that and be like, okay, opener's gonna be up here on this line, pull it down a little from my second to the next line, pull it down a little from my third to the next line. So if you're jacking the shirt, jacking they call it, pulling the shirt all the way down, before you take your opener, you're just making it hard to touch, right? I almost always recommend people use looser gear for the most part. And I think that if you allowed for a little bit more movement in the shirt and didn't aim to get so much carryover out of it, not only would you be able to touch easier, you'd lose less position on your way to the touch, and you know, you'd probably have a smoother press. Now, I think that the lowering here looks pretty good, but we're also having to give up a lot of shoulder position, right? As the bar comes down, the shoulders are popping up and forward, And then when we go to press, you know, we're still probably we did get very, very slight, almost like very, very slight touch. But if I saw this and my lifter was like, I want to open here, I'd say, no, don't do that. Don't do that, you're gonna have a bad time. Find something that you can, you know, more reasonably touch than that. Make sure that you can touch it and get a slight pause out of it, and make sure that it is gonna move well on the way up. The other thing I was saying with the shoulders is, as you're coming down, because the shirt's so tight, you're having to give up a lot of shoulder position, and then when you go to press, the bar comes back and you're so far out of position that the lockout gets super, super tough. Right? You can see the shoulders and elbows fly way back, and yeah, lockout's a little sketchy. So I think by just jacking your shirt, pulling your shirt down less, let it ride up a little bit, you're gonna get a way easier touch. You're gonna be able to take, you know, a few kilos off of this, 5 to 10, and then you'll have a really reasonable opener there, right? I know that the meme, or maybe just the way it's been done for a long time is, you know, huge swing, and you know, you either crush or you bomb out, and that's equipped bench, baby. That's showbiz, baby. But I think especially when you're earlier in your, you know, equipped benching career, I think it makes way more sense to try to just get, you know, good at using the shirt and good at doing the pressing and get strong, and, you know, try to use a little less equipment and a little more strength. And I think that just will cultivate a lot better habits in the long run for you. So yeah, that would be my critique for you. And I wish you luck in your next competition. I hope you do really well. Our next lifter is Long, and he's doing some deadlifts. Okay, so he just says basically that his deadlift is 125, his 1RM deadlift is 125, and wants to improve his deadlift. So, first things first, looks like, I'm not sure if we're pulling in a heeled shoe, like a lifting shoe with a wedge in it. If we are, don't do that for deadlifts. That's gonna, excuse me, that's gonna throw you off. It's gonna throw you forward a little bit. And it's gonna make it a little tougher to get into a good position. So if you're using a shoe with a heel or a wedge in it, just get a nice flat shoe, or you can even deadlift just in your socks. In terms of the actual deadlift technique here, I think number one, don't look in the mirror, turn around, look out. The big reason I say that is because we want you to be able to feel what good technique feels like, not have to look at what good technique looks like. If you were ever to sort of, you know, move forward and go into a powerlifting competition, you're not gonna have a mirror, right? Also, I think the fact that it takes a while for you to like look, see something's wrong, process that, think about how to change it, and then get the feedback of how it looks is just like a really long, convoluted loop in order to make technique adjustments. The way I recommend lifters make technique adjustments is, how does it feel, right? Because if it feels good or better, chances are it's good or better. So, and that's a pretty instantaneous thing. It's like, well, what if I push my knees out a little bit? That doesn't feel good. Okay, don't do it. What if I let my knees come in a little more? What if I'm a little narrower, right? And then it becomes these things of how it feels. Once you can create a model in your head of what your good technique looks like based on how it feels, then you'll know immediately if something is off, or if you've made an improvement, or if you're just having an off day. Anyways, I digress. The next thing I think we're gonna look at here is probably narrowing your stance. I think it's really common, a lot of sort of more beginner lifters will default to a bit of a wider stance because it feels maybe a bit more comfortable at first. And I know I just finished saying that if it feels good, do it, but in the case of conventional deadlifts, they never feel good. So I would narrow up slightly, and by narrowing up your stance, it's gonna allow you to narrow up your grip a little bit. and I think it's gonna allow you to get into a better position. Your positioning on this first rep in terms of all the things that you do to get into position looks great, right? We kind of pull the hips down, we've got a pretty good back angle. Again, I would just keep your head looking more down here instead of having your back angle here and your head angle like this, right? I would just try to keep it all nice and straight through. So you're pulling your chin back into your neck a little bit and just kind of packing in to keep the whole trunk kind of as one unit. But the first thing that happens, number one, we're a little on the toes. You can see the space beneath the heel, right? We're already a little forward over the bar. So when you pull down, we have to make sure that we keep a nice even foot pressure. We want to have pressure down through the heels, pressure down through the ball of the foot. We want to be evenly pressing. Now the next thing that happens is when we start the lift, and this is a very, very common thing for a newer lifter, is we see the hips rise up quite a bit behind you. And this usually indicates a couple of things. Number one, we're not quite as tight as we could be in the upper back. We're not using the lats to kind of pull the bar into us, and that might not be exactly what's happening, but it's just a concept, a cue, right? If we can use the lats to kind of pull the bar into us, and patience. Patience off the floor. That's probably one of my number one cues for an earlier or more intermediate, or sort of more early intermediate lifter, is find that patience off the floor. What happens when the hips come up is that we start applying pressure to the bar here. The bar doesn't want to move off the floor yet. It's going to be hard for us to break the bar off the floor while maintaining this torso angle and this hip height, but if we can, we're going to be in a much better position throughout the rest of the lift. So if we exert a little bit more force and do the harder thing here at the beginning, it's going to make for a better, smoother deadlift and a better strength curve throughout the deadlift. But what happens generally is just you're like, okay, well that position's really hard, and your body starts changing things so that you can complete the lift. We have to resist that urge for the hips to come up, right? We want to find that tension. We want to get locked in probably about here and just really drive down into the floor, not letting this torso angle change any further at all. We end up, coming up, going into a bit of a stiff-legged deadlift, not the end of the world. Rep 2, we don't pull ourselves down nearly as far, right? We're a little more over the bar, we got a higher hip position, knees are a little further back. So we're also gonna wanna work on trying to create that consistency, right? And that's another reason why I talk about trying to feel your positions as opposed to see them, right? It's really, again, it's a tough game to try to see it, correct it, make the changes, feel the feedback, see if you changed it, if it looks different, try to remember how it looks. Like, there are a lot of steps to that process, like I've said. If you can just find a way that feels good, where you can feel the tension, feel the pressure, then it's gonna be easier to be more consistent with that. So trying to find that sensation of like, okay, as I pull in, I wanna feel some tension in my hips and hamstrings. I wanna feel some tension in my glutes. I wanna feel some tension in my lats. And we have a number of different deadlift guides, the definitive guides that we've made on our channel, talking a lot about sumo deadlift, conventional deadlift, squatting, benching, all that kind of stuff. So if you want a more in-depth, sort of comprehensive guide of each lift, go ahead and check the channel. I think we've even made playlists of all the videos we've made over the years with different tips for all the different lifts. But yeah, sort of a high-level overview of a couple of things that I would tackle just to start with. So best of luck with your lifting, Long. Next lifter, we have Alec. So Alec says they're a big fan. Thanks for all the content. Doing PAX minimum effective dose program. Don't know what that is. I'm a little out of the loop with like a lot of the like popular Reddit programs and stuff. I'm not super up to date on. So this is the second triple with 345, ended up being an 8.5 RPE. Struggled a little with depth on this day, particularly if I'm benching, I think this was my best set. Okay. I get shoulder and elbow pain with squats, particularly if I'm benching more frequently. Switch to Talon sloth grip. I haven't heard that before, but I know what you mean. A little while back, which has helped, but still acts up. Looking for general feedback on form. So, first things first, looking at the position of the elbows and shoulders, things look a little disconnected, right? We're kind of like back here with the elbows pointed out behind us a little bit. And usually what that means is, you know, if the humerus, if the upper limb of the arm is oriented like this, that means the shoulder blade is tilted up and forward, which makes it really, really hard to tie in the muscles that are holding the bar and the spot the bar is resting on the back to the rest of the trunk. So, I mean, and the other thing that's gonna do is it's gonna make it way harder for us to have the requisite flexibility for our hands to be on the bar while the bar's on our back. If we can get the shoulder blades pulled back down a little bit, all of a sudden the whole system tilts and shifts, and it's way easier to reach back onto the bar. So I would do a little bit of an analysis and a little bit of tweaking and rethinking of how we're putting the bar on our back, trying to probably end up in a position where the shoulder blades, instead of being up here on your rib cage, are pulled a little bit more down in how they sit on the rib cage. First. Second, it looks like we're able to get depth. We just kind of have to push for it a little bit. It looks like maybe as we get into the bottom, things are rolling forward a little. Yeah. All right, so another really common thing, right? We end up getting a little far forward in the bottom. And I've talked about this before, but because, you know, the length of the tib fib, the lower limb of the leg, doesn't actually change throughout the lift, the further forward your knee goes, the further down it's gonna be. The further back the knee is, the higher it's gonna be, to a point. But, I mean, if you can get it to start going back down and still squat without falling, let me know, because that's wild. What I'm getting at here is that if we can keep our weight a little more back on the heels, if we can sit back a little more into the squat, we're gonna be able to find depth easier, as opposed to just really driving these knees so far forward that, you know, regardless of where the hip crease gets to, this knee is also tracking down the deeper we go. So we're getting to a point here where, you know, the best we can do is parallel, because, you know, it's a moving goalpost. That knee keeps moving forwards and down, as opposed to staying up more and being more, you know, sort of centered midfoot or even slightly to the heels, where the hips sit down and the knee stays a little higher. Now all of a sudden the hip crease is back here and it's lower. So that's I think the thing that's going on with the depth is, yeah, we're just getting really far forward on the feet. We're getting really far forward in the bottom, and it's kind of masking depth. So that was a little bit of a better rep, this last one here, right? I think we kind of caught the knees a little earlier, right? The knee kind of stops moving right about there. And then we sit down and back. And I think we get slightly more convincing depth there. However, in these other reps, see how the knee drives forwards that much more? Depth not as convincing. Depth more convincing. Now it's gonna feel like you're a lot more bound up and a lot more kind of like things running into each other. I know for me, when I have good positioning, a lot of the times I can kind of feel my feel my quads and my thighs like push into my torso a little bit. But I like that, I use that, right? It's this idea of kind of like bunching everything up and, you know, winding the spring as we sit into the bottom, and then boom, being able to use all that sort of stored elastic energy, or, you know, whatever. I don't know, muscles don't really operate off that much elastic energy, but you get the concept, right? So, yeah, I think we're doing a pretty good job overall in the squat. I think your bracing looks solid, but the couple things I would change is, number one, upper back, right? Positioning those shoulder blades a little bit better. And number two, just trying to keep back a little bit so that we can get a bit more convincing depth. All right, final video here comes from Ruben. It's a pretty long video. Ruben is under 80 kilo, natural strongman competitor. Recently got a deadlift suit, would love some tips to get more out of it. Changed deadlift style, used to be a lot more aggressive, slamming hips into the bar. That made for very inconsistent deadlifts though. Change the style you see in the first portion of the video, getting tight first and then a much more tame dynamic start. Been feeling very good, more consistent off the floor. Second portion of the video is a few singles in the suit. 3 singles at 200, then 2 at 220. Third single 200 is where I feel the pop from the suit for the first time, but after that it's like it disappeared. Singles 220 were almost harder with the suit on than raw. Any advice on whether the technique I'm using is raw is fine for the suit and how I could utilize the suit to the best of its ability? Make sure I get the pop. Part of learning to pull in a suit is just understanding how uncomfortable and distracting it is. Yeah, I think you actually are doing a fantastic job. I think your 220 reps look really solid. I can see the pop that you're getting in this one. And I think one of the biggest issues people run into with deadlift suits is if the straps are too tight. I think the straps being really tight a lot of the times can throw people off because it's gonna pull you into like more flexion. It's gonna pull you and curl you kind of forwards and not allow you to maintain that nice neutral brace. But most of the time when that happens, people get hung up at the top. And it looks like your deadlifts are really smooth and sort of consistent all the way through. So I'm not seeing you running into that issue at the top. I think probably the biggest thing you're gonna wanna work on is just trying to get this start position really consistent, right? Because you're pulling in, and I think the only thing that I can think might be going wrong here is that we're getting a little too far behind the bar, right? It looks like on this rep, and I think the camera angle changes slightly, but let's see what we can see here. It does, yeah. I think in this one, yeah, we're definitely a little more over the bar, right? We're a little more lined up where the shoulder blade is probably directly up and down from the bar. And I think on the 220, and a lot of people do this when it starts to get heavier, is they're like, oh, I gotta pull in harder, I gotta brace harder, I gotta do things like more aggressively. And it looks like, yeah, we get a little bit back behind the bar. So now the knees and the shins are pushing the bar away from you as you sit into it. And we're having to kind of work against ourselves off the floor. So the biggest thing I think I can see there is that with these heavier weights, we're getting a little more aggressive with how we're pulling in. And I think we're pulling ourselves behind the bar as opposed to staying out over the bar a little bit more. And that second rep actually looked to me like it was a little bit better, a little bit cleaner. Also looks like a pretty tight suit. And I find, especially for a conventional deadlifter, in a tight suit, so that's the hardest piece of equipment to use other than maybe a bench shirt, which bench shirts and I never really got along, but yeah. So I would say if you can, you know, I don't know if there's any slack in those straps, but if you let the straps out a little bit, that's probably gonna help you learn it. And if not, just make sure that when you pull in, like you're doing a great job getting your back set, maintaining a good trunk position as you pull down into it. Just make sure that as you pull down into it, you're not getting behind the bar, right? Film straight on from the side so you can see where that shoulder blade, importantly, shoulder blade, not the front of your shoulder, right? If this is your trunk when you're lifting, we're not looking for the front of your shoulder to line up with the bar. We're looking for the center of the shoulder blade to line up with the bar, right? Because your humerus doesn't anchor into the tip of your anterior delt, right? It's gonna have a way more sort of usable and relevant line of pull when compared to the actual sort of midline of the shoulder blade. So yeah, if that's going a little bit behind the bar, then we're having to like pull back into ourselves off the floor, which again, kind of working against ourselves. But overall, you've got a really, really solid deadlift. I don't think that you're doing a whole lot wrong. A lot of it's gonna be getting used to how uncomfortable and awkward the suit can feel sometimes, but keep practicing, keep working at it. And again, like I said, film straight on from the side, you're gonna get probably a lot more information, a lot more valuable information about your technique and how it's working, and you know, you'll be able to see how it's looking a lot better that way. So, all right, that's it for today. If you liked what you saw here and you want to get your own form checks, maybe every week, maybe as a part of a really robust program library with over 50 programs and a really sleek app, you can check out the Calgary Barbell Training app, free 7-day trial in the description box below. And if you want to check out Calgary Barbell coaching, nutrition coaching, all that kind of stuff, we do it. CalgaryBarbell.com. Check it out, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.